It was about 24 years ago that I was coming back from Barcelona, having had won the gold medal. And we're going to share a little bit of the story that went into that medal tonight, because I did something very unusual. I left the parameters of safety of my own sport, and for the first time in history, I partnered with a synchronized swimming coach. A swimmer and a synchronized swimmer coming together, coach coming together, was a radical idea in its era. But what Debbie and I did after the Olympics was we went away and talked about some fundamental principles that we distilled through our experience that we live by to this day and that we'd like to share with you today. There we go. Tonight we've chosen 3 traits to workshop that really deal with this idea of going for gold as we're aging. And it's about expanding your perspective, utilizing power of thought, and creating synergy. And we're going to elaborate on those themes as we go. We've got some serious outcomes for today. So, first one is, click. Want you to understand that a narrow perspective obviously limits you in terms of what's possible for you as you age, so we want to change that. Well, to learn how to create a winning mindset for yourself, sort of a secret from high-performance sport. Fourth is to recognize the power of collaboration and community, and how much that really helps as we age and to get our optimal health. And finally, to have some tools that you can take back and use the very next day. So, as I said, what we did was born from a real-life experience. And in a way, I guess you could say I've been going for gold since I was 8 years old. Because the minute I started swimming, I was trying to reach that goal. And physical fitness, I'm so grateful that that was something that was really part of my life for such a long time. I have never stopped exercising since I've retired from swimming. It's changed a lot. I don't swim 4 or 6 hours a day anymore. I'm lucky if I get a 30-minute exercise routine in my day, and sometimes it's just walking, sometimes it's doing some stretching, sometimes it's doing more rigorous stuff. But it's always been part of my life. When I was a little kid, the dream was to be the best in the world one day. And that started by being the Alberta champion at 14 years old. You got to start somewhere. So by 17, I won my first nationals. And then at around 23 years old, about a year and a half to go before the Barcelona Olympics, I seemed to get my break. And at the World Championships in the morning, I qualified in my race second, which meant if I could do the same thing 8 hours later, I might win a medal finally, break that curse of always missing the podium. The leader and favorite in my race was an American, a world record holder. His name was Jeff Rouse. I didn't think for a minute that I could beat Jeff, but I thought that I could hold off the rest of the world and hopefully get that medal. 100-meter backstroke was my race, which is a very interesting race because you're literally going backwards. You can't see the competition unless you're ahead of them. So I didn't expect to see Jeff, but again, look at the rest of the field. Jeff was in lane 4, I was in lane 5, the best swimmer from the Soviet Union was in lane number 6. And I remember the race starting, I couldn't see Jeff as expected, but I could see the swimmer from the Soviet Union sort of down around my chest, and I just focused on him. I just thought, stay there, Mr. Russia, stay there, Mr. Russia, I can win a medal. Did a flip turn, started to swim the second length, and with about 25 meters to go, with the Russian swimmer still down here, as my right arm and hand came out of the water, I could see that it was exactly even with the swimmer next to me. Well, this was the world record holder. I remember thinking, relax, relax. Oh my God, you could win. Relax, relax. Stroke for stroke. Hit the wall, and the first thing we do usually in swimming, you probably saw Penny didn't turn around and look to the scoreboard really quickly, but usually we look to find the scoreboard, and I found my name, Tewksbury, Mark, Canada, 55.29 and the number 2. So a personal best, Canadian record. I was thrilled, but I thought, who won this thing? I looked above my name and it said, Rouse, Jeff, USA, 55.23 and the number 1. So Jeff had outtouched me by 6/100ths of a second. You can't even see 6/100ths. It's less than a fingernail, and true story, 2 days earlier, I'd cut my fingernails. I was like, what was I thinking? I went back to training, and I kind of felt like, wow, this huge breakthrough. I'm that close to the best guy in the world. And I did what happens to a lot of people when we have success or when things are going well, we just take it for granted. We go back to our routine, we do things as we always do them. which is exactly what I did that year leading into the Olympics after the World Championships. 6 months later, I had a rematch against Jeff, and it took place on Canadian soil, so I had the home field advantage. There was all kinds of buzz about how exciting it was going to be. I expected the race to unfold in a similar way to the World Championships, that I would be behind the first part, but at the 75-meter mark, when it was ready, I was going to put all my engines on and inch ahead and hit the wall first, and it was going to be incredible. In the morning, Jeff qualified in lane 4. I was in lane 5, just like the World Championships. The first 50 meters, I couldn't see him at all, but I was expecting that 75-meter point to catch him, and I kept focusing on that. Did a flip turn, started to swim 55 meters. Here I come. 65 meters, look out. 75 meters, no Jeff. 85 meters, no Jeff. 95 meters, no Jeff, but why is the crowd cheering? I've got 2 strokes left. As I hit the wall, I could just hear the pandemonium in the stadium. I looked to the scoreboard and found my name, Tewksbury, Mark, Canada, 55.29, and the number 2. Exactly the same result to a 100th of a second as the World Championships. Don't change a thing, get the same result. Wow, it really works. But above my name, it said, Rouse Jeff USA, 53.93 and new world record. So Jeff had dropped 1.2 seconds from the time that we had swum at the World Championships. I'm in a sport measured by hundredths of seconds. I improved over a 7-year period, 1 or 2 tenths of a second each year, which if you added up 7 years was 1.2 seconds. Now there is less than a year. We start with this story because we want to share how the metaphor, how easy it is just to do things like we've always done them. And often we don't make the change, especially in my case, that Olympic year, with everything riding on it, until outside circumstance forced me to make that change, because it's just human nature. So if you've been doing the same for a long time, don't worry. You're just like everybody, you're very normal, you're very human. But today we want to share some of the bigger ideas of what we did that Olympic year beyond just the exercise that helped us get the most out of that time and that we think apply to going for the gold as you age.
By looking at circumstances differently, you can access all kinds of new potential for yourself. So, you know, it's really human nature to have selective awareness. We only tend to notice the things that we set ourselves up to notice. As we're aging, maybe, potentially, the strongest thing you could do is to keep your perspective open. Keep an open mind about what you're doing, where you're going, and focus on what's good.
Here's the things we wanted to think about. How can you look at aging from a different point of view that will benefit you and others? And that might mean sometimes you have to ask people a question. Like you hear stuff that isn't necessarily true and you say, well, did you notice something else so that they can focus on it? What's one thing you can do differently that will help you go for gold? What's one action that you can take? So for me, Debbie got me to start going twice a week to a gym class with instruction. I thought it was silly 10 years ago. I don't need this. I'm an Olympic champion. It's one of the best things I've ever had happen to me because I know at least twice a week I'm going to get some exercise. I don't have to think about it because I'm going to join a class, and at least that base is in my life. So that's one thing that I'm going to keep doing that is working. So the challenge is, what can you do differently to age even better as you hit the next years of your life? Next trait, utilize power of thought. By mastering your thoughts, you have a much greater potential of accessing, a much greater chance of accessing your full potential. This is about the mind-body connection. It's great to be physically active for sure, but at the end of the day, this is the trait where really a champion's or made or not. It's about the direct link between our physiology and our psychology. So what we think impacts our actions, our behavior, and ultimately our results.
As you're aging, think about what you're thinking about. It's like this. By some estimates, we have somewhere in the area of 60,000 thoughts a day. And of those thoughts, 80% of them are about ourselves. So we're really, really self-absorbed. And 2/3 of those thoughts are often negative in nature. You know what it's like sometimes when something gets stuck in your head and you just sort of can't keep, it's bugging you and it's just running through there and you can't get it out? That's what it's like. So it's really important to think about what you're thinking about so you can get rid of those thoughts that aren't serving you well and focus on the ones that are.
So this is the trait that literally I won the Olympics with. So Debbie one day out of the pool decided to surprise me. And she said, very innocently, "Why can't you beat Jeff Rouse, the world record holder?" And she thought I would say, "Yeah, you're right, why can't I?" But I said, before I could stop myself, so all the unconscious thinking, because she caught me off guard, I said, because I'm weak off the start, because I'm weak off the turn, because I'm bad at the finish, because he's 6'4", because I've never beaten him, because I'm Canadian, because like I had this list of like, because a Canadian had never won the event. So I had this list of like 10 things that came out, and we both went, oh, that's why you can't beat Jeff Rouse. And what we did, when I made those things, we took a piece of paper and we wrote them all down. There were things there that were out of our control. Jeff is 6'4", get over it. You are Canadian, that's it, right? You know, that's it. So, but the other stuff we could start to do things about. And so by taking action for them, they not only helped strengthen them from a physical perspective, mentally I started to believe and think differently because I was doing something about it. So it's a little bit like the why can't you, you know? Why can't you be in your best shape at 70? Why can't you start a new activity? Why can't you, whatever the question is, and listen to what comes up. So the final challenge for this one is just to think about how will you maximize your thinking to go for gold as you age? Because it's incredible. You can be physically active, but if there's a lot of negative thinking or misperception in there, can actually counterproduce against that physical activity. Our final trait is create synergy. And this is really our team building trait and the importance of community and surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you succeed. It's the same principle from sport exactly. And actually, some of the things that Debbie and I did way back in our era together has become actually a formal part of the sports system in Canada. So we're going to share with you today something called an integrated support team.
For aging and as you're going forward, it's really important for all of us to get our own IST. Who needs to be on your IST? So if you're there in the middle, what people do you need around you? Could be people like family, could be a social network, it might be certain doctors, it could be anything. You decide, everybody might be different, but the point here is remember to collaborate, stay engaged, and work with other people and kind of, in a sort of like fun but selfish way, create your IST that's going to help get you your gold and to the top of the podium. Okay, so just to recap, first of all, we hope you've enjoyed tonight. First of all, expand your perspective. So how can you look at aging from different points of view that will benefit you and others, and think of one thing that you can do differently that will help you go for your gold. Second of all, utilize power of thought. Are you maximizing your thinking to go for gold as you age? Remember the tool, wait. What am I thinking? And
finally, that magic of coming together and building that integrated support team that literally brings energy and strength to you that you can't see often, but it's there that we were able to show you tonight physically. So we know that Jennifer's going to build on these ideas and knock us out for the first 15 meters. So thank you for our session, and please welcome Jennifer to the stage.
Mark and Debbie just spoke about the power of positive thinking on achieving our physical goals. My role as the discussant is to support their amazing, inspiring stories and messages with the science. What comes to mind when you think of someone who is elderly? Think of the image. It may look like a positive image, like something like this, a man who is mentally, physically healthy and fully engaged with life. Or perhaps it's a more negative image of an individual who is frail, alone, and in a nursing home. These two images represent extreme endpoints of what aging could be. And the image you had in mind was more like one than the other. And this represents your aging bias or your stereotype about aging. These stereotypes formed when we were children, and they're reinforced throughout our lifespan so that when we ourselves become old, these aging stereotypes actually become self-stereotypes and can lead to self-fulfilling prophecies. This is good news if your image tended to be very positive. However, for many of us, it is not. We can all be affected by our own aging self-stereotypes. These could be holding us back, but we do have the power to change them. In fact, research by Levy et al. Suggests that simply imagining an older adult who is both physically and mentally healthy can actually reduce your own negative aging stereotypes and improve your overall physical functioning. Okay. So now that we know how to overcome ageism, how do we boost our brain health in aging? When it comes to brain health outcomes, much of our risk, or a certain amount of our risk, is determined by biological factors. For example, with dementia, age is a critical risk factor, and certain genes also increase our risk. However, our lifestyle also plays a critical role. And this is important because it creates opportunity for us to train for a healthier brain. Physical activity is associated with the reduced risk of developing dementia later in life. Another critical factor associated with increased dementia risk is social isolation. A recent meta-analysis found 3 factors to be especially critical: low social participation, less frequent social contact, and feeling lonely. Interestingly, many studies found that people could feel lonely even when they were technically not alone, which speaks to the quality of our social interactions and not just the quantity of them. So now, over and above our genetics and the biology of aging, our lifestyle factors of physical and social activity can help us to train our brain for health. However, more research is needed. I'm presenting this evidence to show that exercise and social activity early in life helps to protect your brain later in life. But there's also evidence to show the opposite, that people's brain health status determines how much they engage in physical and social activity. These 2 factors are intrinsically linked, and this is an active research area that we're exploring. A great way to stay up to date with the recent research is at the McMaster Optimal Aging portal. There's one very important thing when it comes to using lifestyle to promote brain health, and that is you actually have to do it. I know, right? So when we think about just physical activity, for example, the guidelines recommend that we get 150 minutes per week of aerobic exercise. So every week we need to be engaging. We can't just do it once in a while. You have to build physical and social activity into your schedule every week to get the benefits. But let's face it, that can be challenging and it can be hard to stick with it over the long term. So here are some tips to help you out. Just this simple act, it's so simple, scheduling it into your calendar can actually help you achieve a permanent change in your lifestyle. It's my hope that this new knowledge will help you to go for gold, no matter what your podium may be.